Welcome to an overview of the power of the presidency investigation. In this investigation, you're trying to figure out how to respond to the question, would the founders have approved of executive actions concerning DACA? Today, as you begin learning about the power of the presidency, instead of memorizing names and dates from a textbook, which is really hard and not particularly interesting, you will instead read and hear several different perspectives. You'll discuss with your classmates, and then make your own decision about what it all means. Read, Inquire, Write lessons are called investigations. Throughout each investigation, you're looking for evidence to figure out how to respond to a central question. You'll notice that our investigations never say, answer a central question. Instead, you'll notice we ask you to respond to a central question. That's because we believe there is not one right answer. There could be multiple answers. So we want you to respond to the question with evidence. Read, Inquire, Write investigations support you in building a case for your argument using evidence and reasoning. Over time, this kind of work will strengthen your reading, writing, critical thinking, and problem-solving skills. In this investigation, you're trying to respond to the central question, would the founders have approved of executive actions concerning DACA? You're probably asking two questions now. One, what does executive action mean? And two, what is DACA? We'll answer those questions now. First, executive actions are a type of presidential power that people debate. These actions include a range of tools presidents can use to change public policy. If the president uses an executive action, the president does not have to persuade Congress to make a new law. That's important. So what is DACA? DACA stands for Deferred Action for Childhood Arrivals. It's one example of an executive action. It was an executive action specifically for people who were brought to the United States as children without documentation. They were called dreamers. DACA was an executive action that allowed dreamers to stay in the United States for 2 years, get a work permit and driver's license, and apply for in-state tuition rates at public universities, and among other opportunities. There were two executive actions regarding DACA, one by President Obama in 2012 and one by President Trump in 2017. There are different perspectives about these executive actions, which brings us back to our central question. Would the founders have approved of executive actions concerning DACA? In this investigation, you are an expert witness for lawyers who are presenting at the Supreme Court. You are an expert on what the founders thought about the power of the presidency. As an expert witness, you must prepare your evidence to present to the court. You need to decide if the founders would have approved of executive actions as a power of the president, and you will use DACA as your focus. But you also need to anticipate what the other side will argue. What will you say to someone who holds a different point of view? This will be your counter-argument. Prepare your argument as a speech to read to the court. Again, your task is to use the sources to help you decide whether the founders would have approved of executive actions as a power of the president, using DACA as your focus. Respond to someone who holds a different point of view, and write an argument with a counter-argument. In this investigation, you will write a counter-argument. In this type of argument, the writer takes a strong position in response to a question or problem, providing evidence and reasoning to back up the claim. Then the writer introduces a different point of view, also known as a counter-argument, and critiques it. In other words, the writer shows why the counter-argument is weak. Our investigation will guide you step by step in developing your counter-argument. Let's review those steps now. First, you'll begin by building background and learning more about other executive actions that previous presidents have ordered. Next, your teacher will provide you with different sources to read about the power of the presidency. You'll use these sources to determine whether the founders would have approved of the executive action regarding DACA. To help you read these sources, your teacher will provide you with this bookmark. The bookmark tool will help you understand, analyze, and evaluate sources about the power of the presidency. The bookmark prompts you to make annotations, or detailed notes, about the sources. You'll do this as you read and after you read. For example, in this source, you can see that a student has circled important information about the people discussed in this book excerpt by a history professor. The student also made notes about what those circles mean. You will do the same on your sources, and the bookmark tool will guide you. Making these annotations is really important because they will help you remember key ideas in the sources. This way you don't have to try to remember everything or have to reread everything later. Instead, these annotations will make it easier to write your speech to the Supreme Court. In Step 3, you will weigh the evidence presented in the sources about the power of the presidency. You will begin by sorting the sources based on your understanding. Then you will construct and discuss the arguments based on what you have learned from these sources. Then, in Step 4, you will read and analyze a mentor text, similar to the type of counterargument you will write about the power of the presidency. A mentor text is a sample of writing that shows you one way to organize and write a counterargument type of essay. It includes important parts such as counterclaim, counter-evidence, and critique of the counter-argument. It's a good example of the way you can structure your own response about the power of the presidency. Just remember that the mentor text is not exactly what you'll write, and it is not a source. The mentor text is one example of what your essay might look like. Next, you'll use the planning graphic organizer. The graphic organizer is like a roadmap for your essay. It helps you organize your ideas about which sources are most reliable for learning about the power of the presidency, and it will prompt you to give the key parts of a counter-argument essay. You will use all of the work you've done so far to help you develop this roadmap. You'll look at your annotated sources, you'll determine what argument you think is strongest, and then make decisions to plan the essay you'll write. Then, in Step 6, you're ready to write your essay and respond to the central question: would the founders have approved of executive actions concerning DACA? Be sure to use the sources you have read to write your response to make the strongest argument. We know it's sometimes difficult to start writing. That's why we also include a useful language tool. You can look at this tool to choose from examples of how to start your claim, evidence, and reasoning. Finally, after you have spent some time writing, pause to use the reflection tool. The reflection tool will help you review what you have written so far and set goals for your next steps. The reflection tool reminds you about what to include in your argument. Let's review quickly the 7 steps you'll take throughout this investigation. First, building background. Second, read and analyze sources using the bookmark tool. Third, weigh the evidence. Fourth, analyze the mentor text. Fifth, complete the planning graphic organizer, deciding on the argument you will make. Sixth, use the useful language tool as you draft your essay. And seventh, review and improve your essay using the reflection tool. As you work through the investigation, make sure to talk with your classmates and others who can support you as you learn about and respond to the central question: would the founders have approved of executive actions concerning DACA? Good luck!